So before Gerasimas will introduce the panel and moderate this afternoon session, there's one little thing that I forgot to share with you about what we did at the Ludwigsburg Festival. We decided, usually when an artist, a musician or a dancer has a performance, normally you would hand over flowers, right? Flowers that they take to the hotel room and it's nice, it's a nice gesture. We decided for each artist who came to visit our festival, we are planting a tree. And the planting of the tree was with a certificate. We didn't hand over the tree, of course, but every artist who came in the 5 years got one tree. In 5 years, we were planting, guess how many? 1,000 trees, which is a little forest now growing after I'm leaving. And that's also a beautiful symbol for sustainability, because the term sustainability comes from the forest. When you cut down a tree, you have to replant a tree, that the future generations will still have plants. And I think this is something very highly symbolic that we can take in our daily practice. If you think about for a next gift for somebody, buy a certificate and give over to a friend or whatever. There's a tree that I planted for you, just to share this idea with you. Now back to Gerasimas.
Thank you very much. So welcome back to our session titled, where we will explore in the field of business and museums as spaces of individual and collective spirituality. So let me introduce you our panel. I start from Dr. Eleftheria Egel, who is a mentor for women entrepreneurs. She's a scholar, and she's also social startup and founder and advisor.
Thank you.
And Dr. Marlene Mouliou, who is associate professor of museology in the Athens and Kapodistrian University of Athens, and a Fulbright fellow. So I will moderate this session. I will only ask questions. And the first question I want to ask you is very, very simple. What is spirituality? No.
Shall I start? Yeah. I think before giving some definitions on spirituality, especially spirituality on management, I would like to clarify the difference between religion and spirituality. Because many times, especially in secular societies, spirituality is confused with religion. So whereas religion describes a specific faith tradition with a certain sacred documents or practices and a way of approaching the divine, spirituality is more about the personal connection, the personal and individual connection of every human being with the divine. And part of this connection are qualities and values like universal values like compassion and love. We heard so much about today and yesterday. That is values that enhance human well-being.
Well, I have to say, first of all, thank you to Gerasimas and to the organizers, to the World Human Forum for inviting me. I'm humbled and honored to be here. And not only to inviting me, but to pair with Eleftheria to discuss a very vast subject that I'm now discovering and I'm really passionate about. I agree, it's very difficult to define spirituality, especially in museums. It's a term that does not appear as such. I will tell you a little bit more about later. But we need first to understand and to acknowledge that is a very difficult term, a term that might be subjective and misunderstood and avoided even in certain circumstances. Also, spirituality is a term that comes in and out of fashion. And we're, of course, in a time, because of all these global crises, multiple levels, spirituality is a key issue. I was in the United States as a Fulbright Fellow for some months, and I was expecting spiritual elements to appear in the bibliography or in everyday culture, but I was really astonished with how much society needs spiritual guidance and new directions. So as a definition, I would like to share with you two definitions that came to my knowledge in a different way. The first is by an artist. He's a Puerto Rican, American-born artist whom I met in New York whilst I was doing my Fulbright Fellowship. He was exhibiting his works in the City Museum of New York. And one day I went to meet him in order to arrange a private conversation with him. And I overheard his conversation with a young man who was following a workshop. And the young person asked him, "What is spirituality?" So I said, "Oh my God, this is the right moment to hear what he's going to say." So I'm going to give you the exact words, not to miss what he said. He said, "Spirituality is awareness and gratitude. The idea of inviting yourself to be happy, to be the conductor of your life's happiness. And the good that you provide is not only for you, but for the whole world. Spirituality is inviting yourself to be as human as possible, to embrace the simplicity of life, to live in liberty, and to expand your universe. Spirituality is to have a personal calling, to always try to learn and never stop expanding your knowledge. Explore with wonder." This is what he said. He's a spiritual leader himself and an artist, of course. The other definition comes from neuroscience, from a neuroscientist that I follow her work, and she was like a mentor without knowing her in person. Now I met her in Greece some months ago. Lisa Miller, who defines spirituality as a moment of deep connection with another being or in nature, a feeling of awe or transcendence, an experience of startling synchronicity, or a time when a stranger showed up and did something that changed your life. So in a way, our connection had the spiritual element as well, because we didn't know each other. We were brought by a force, Erasmus, to discuss about something that is so meaningful to both of us.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, the definitions of spirituality that are given by management scholars, I also brought two. The first one is by Emmons, a social scientist, that he writes that spirituality is typically defined quite broadly, with the term encompassing a sense for meaning, for unity, for connectedness, for transcendence, for the highest of human potential. And the second one is by management scholar Mol Ulvas, 2014, who defines spirituality as the personal creation of the meaning of existence. Its dimensions are the inner self, otherness, that is human community and the natural environment, and of course the sacred. So in that sense, I think it's different expressions from the same theme.
Yeah, and it sounds like something in common there, like it is the essence of eudaimonia, which we are discussing. This is what I'm listening with all these definitions. But we want to listen from you more, particularly the term spirituality. How is it used in business from Eleftheria and in museums from Marlene? But also I would like to know, what is your personal drive to explore this and to research this?
Shall I start? Well, the personal drive is, of course, my ongoing passion for museums. This is my field. I always want to research their social value, and this is a key topic for many years, not only in my work, but globally. We had, in the recent years, a huge debate about the new museum definition of how we see museums in the world, what are they matter, what are they meant to be in society. But apart from that, I came to the spirituality element because I'm very much interested in the brain and how it works. And there is a lot of interesting work about the plasticity of the brain and how spiritual elevation can change our way of being and the way we connect with ourselves and with others. And of course, I see museums as a connecting space for the inner self and our connection to the world and to our communities. So it was a natural, let's say, combination. I had an even wow effect, a eureka moment when I realized so much is written about museums, about empathy, well-being, happiness in museums, their social engagement, their social equity, but not related to spirituality. Spirituality is not a term we meet in museum bibliography as such, although we have discussed many years ago about museums as temples of art, as places of rituals, of course. This is an old story, but not through the spiritual element, not directly. We use other words, and I made a little test for our discussion today. I went to the Dictionary of Museology, a big book that was published some time ago, or not like 1-2 years ago, and has 600 pages to see how many times spirituality appears. Guess what? Just once. Just once, and this is through the entry gaze. So it's related to the objects, sacred objects, and how we connect ourselves with them. Spiritual as a term appears more times, mostly again with objects and how we treat them, how we manage we manage our relationship with them, but also in connection to visitors' experience. And so there is a relation there that we need to explore more. And spirituality is one variable that we research in museum visitors' experience.
Yes, while we were discussing with Marilyn about the spirituality in museums and in management, for me it was actually, I was sort of how can I say, confused probably, because I thought that museums are spiritual. When we talk about the sacred, actually we acknowledge, we imply that this is spiritual. But I found out that it was not the case. Whereas in business, in management, there is a field which is called Management, Spirituality and Religion. And actually in the Academy of Management, which is the largest association of management scholars in the world, we have this division there. And then the scholars, the scholarly field is about researching on the dynamics, on the influence of spirituality or faith in the organizational dynamics and also in the organizational outcomes. So we talk about spiritual leadership, we talk about coming together spiritually. Of course, there is the term also spiritual identity, and also in executive coaching, we use the term spiritual discernment in the sense that the leader, before they make, let's say, a mundane decision, they make a decision for something that very practical, they use a spiritual practice or spiritual guidance. Could it be mindfulness? Could it be prayer? And then they move the focus from their analytical mindset, they move it to the heart, so they have then a more holistic way to approach a problem and also to decide for the best solution.
So more specifically, say how it is expressed in business, the spirituality in daily life, let's say in how is experienced in business.
When it is, let's start by the general business, and then I will talk about a specific type of business. So it has been used. It has been used about the culture to align teams, because it comes down to the basics, the basic values. That is the values that create, that align the team, and they bond the organization together, or they align the personal purpose with the organizational purpose. This is one way to use them. Then, in another way, there are spiritual leadership models which can be applied for leaders, as we use, for example, you gave an example this morning about the theory U of Otto Scharmer. There are many other models, but also the models on spirituality, spiritual leadership, they start from the level that I accept that I'm not only a body, a mind and emotions. There is something more than that. So this is starting by this first acceptance, which changes all actually the intervention and the alignment, or how open I am about what I am doing, and in a sense, what is my purpose for being here?
So if I may ask
Yeah.
more in that. So what I understand is that this approach can alter ultimately the whole identity of an organization if leadership is approached like that, right?
Yes, but for example, if we take let's say the basic definition of spirituality in management, which is a sense of self-transcendence and a quest, the sense of self-transcendence and the feeling of interconnectedness that is coming out of that. In this sense of self-transcendence, it means that I go beyond my ego and I'm ready to embrace also the other as being part of me in that sense. So from that, let's say, heightened perspective, then it means I'm open and I care for the others. I care for the environment. I care for my co-workers, and also through that, when I am at that place, at that space of being, there also comes out what we call as calling. Calling, which is very close to the meaning and purpose. It is that I believe that I have the conviction that there is something, I'm here to do something in this world. And when I have this broad in perspective, this calling is coming out, and then I find my purpose. And we see that, for example, in a special type of business, social business. But before that, if I may, I would like, there is a slide there that not this one. This is about business and making money and make it change. But there is one slide. The other one, not this one. Yes, this one. So actually, when we work with leaders, especially with entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs that start small businesses, because entrepreneurship is not for everyone, and there is a lot of work that needs to be done. I usually start by asking these questions. That is, who are you? What do you like most doing? For whom? Because the purpose is never for us. This is an ego-driven way of looking into things. The purpose is for the others. What am I here to do, and for whom? And then what are their needs, and how have they been transformed because of you?
That's very interesting. You give me a good way into my own field. As I said, spirituality is not the catchword in museums right now. It will be very shortly, very soon, I think. But for some time, we use other terms like social museology, which is a movement for quite a long time, positive museology, museology of flourishing, activist museology. So museums are called for quite some time now to be not just about objects, but mostly about people and about solving the big problems of society, or at least make an entry point to solving them. They're not the only connectors of these problems. So the term does not exist, but I go beyond the term to find in other terms the meaning of spirituality and how museums are really the spiritual spaces we need. Museums, I have to say, perhaps you don't know, are the most trustworthy institutions in society. Studies show that people trust much more museums than any other public institution, because they hold the truth of the universe. They hold authentic objects, they hold ideas, hopefully not ideologies. That is very good takeaway for us to use. So museums are building on this trust, and they are called to be even more proactive, to take stands, not to be neutral. They're not neutral museums. Museums, for instance, in the last years, they are asked to take position regarding decolonization issues, the return of objects, sacred objects to indigenous populations. And they do more and more that with a lot of debate and a lot of resistance from the status quo, but this is something that they're called to do. Museums redefine themselves through the new museum definition. It was a huge debate among our professionals international community. It was not an easy change. And perhaps one can say that the final new museum definition is a kind of diplomatic compromise. That's okay. We go along with that. The current museum definition is both function-based, what museums function, how they function, and what are they valued for. And this is very good. And museum community is now asked to change its code of ethics. There is a committee that is working for some years now to align the ethical framework of operation of museum professionals and museums to go along with the museum definition. So I just want to focus on this example that from the many, many museums that perhaps we can bring. I was fascinated with this one in the States. Perhaps you recognize it. It's a very unique museum. It's Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum in Boston. It's one-woman museum, as her biographer said. It's already 100-some years old, created by this amazing woman who was, of course, representative of the affluent society in Boston. She was a New Yorker, but not a welcomed New Yorker in Boston. So she had her own traumas of disconnection with her social circle, but also personal traumas. She had a lot of life loss, especially her young child. So this difficulty brought her into spiritual journeys, literally and symbolically. She traveled the world to find therapy. And through this traveling, she got connected to art and to beauty. So her mission was to create first a collection of beautiful objects of art. She connected with a big network of artists, of philosophers, of a circle that was innovative at that time. And eventually, at a late stage of her life, feeling that she had this personal calling, as you said, she created this amazing sanctuary, which was her own sanctuary, her own house, but is working as a sanctuary even today. The museum has not changed a bit, only been not refurbished in the galleries, but extended in order to satisfy current visitors' needs. It doesn't have a closed interpretation like usual museums do, like narratives that are asking visitors to align with. No interpretation, just her view, her universe. And the visitors are welcome to her garden, which the garden, the nature is part of this beauty of the universe. They have moments of quiet contemplation. I chose these photographs exactly because they embody these feelings you get in this immersive environment, that you can be alone, contemplating about your life, wondering. It's wonderful to wander, just not forget that, how important it is for us to wander, and also to connect with strangers. It's the safest space in our everyday lives to connect with strangers. Have you connected the museum concept with this power? How we can connect through the art medium or through any other collection. I don't see that spirituality is only about art. It's about any type of collection, either if it's natural or artificial. And of course, this beautiful space. Yes.
Just to add something to that, because when we started discussing, when you initiated me to this museum, and then we started discussing about the social business, actually, social enterprise, museum as a social enterprise, or as a social enterprise, as the idea of actually integrating, incorporating all the basics of spirituality, which is based on purpose, and then on this collective alignment based on this interconnectedness with the others, the problems that the others have to solve the problems of others, but also solving the problems of nature at the same time.
Mm-hmm. But actually, I mean, does all this apply to every business, to every museum? And what are the risks of introducing spirituality in business and museums?
I mean, that's why I started with this positive message of social business, of social enterprise, because for me, this is the model for the future, where by definition, you have to start by the purpose, that there is a problem to solve, and then all the founders, they are purposeful, and then also their governance model, for example, in their governance, they do have also a seat for the beneficiaries. So in a sense, they never lose focus of the purpose. Now, if we come to all businesses, I think I will come to what Alexandra said earlier about the social movement, social forum. We are anti that, but till the time we'll become for something. So what lies in between? So we are in this space in between, and I think also a World Human Forum fits very well because it is in this transitionary period where people start to leave the old paradigm, which is of course the neoliberalism, and which of course when we see in businesses, if a company is in the stock market and then they have to give the results every 3 months, they cannot afford, in a sense, to focus in helping their people to develop, not to develop, I don't like the word, to cultivate their inner self in that sense. But small businesses, we see it also in Germany, where I am. I did some research on the spiritual identity of German small businesses and their refugees integrations. And then we've seen, it was so obvious that if you have these spiritual leaders, people who believe at least in these universal values and they practice love, justice, compassion, inclusion, then of course it is much easier to bring the change in that sense, and then move and then little by little change the system.
Mm-hmm. Asking about which museums are more spiritual, I think this is a question that might detract us from the essence of what is spiritual museum. I think all museums can potentially be spiritual. Of course, we start with those ones that their collections may have a spiritual character, but I have been in exhibitions with very spiritual objects, and I didn't feel spirituality at all because of the way museums have been working on their narrative stories and their storylines. So I've been in museums that one would not expect to be spiritual, and I felt this connection. So my argument is that all museums can be spiritual spaces or have a spiritual potential. We just need to unlock it, to find a way to design intellectually, conceptually, and physically the space so that people, the visitors, can find the elements that they need to connect with themselves and to connect with others. I have some ideas of how we can do that and how we can make this change. Perhaps it's not from one day to the other, but also it is not a difficult change. It's the perspective, it's a different mindset. There are risks, as there are always risks when we use terms as catchwords. We've used the word sustainability or mindfulness a lot without understanding it. And we made mistakes, or we thought that we are using it correctly. So my concern is to not introduce terms that we don't understand, really decipher them, dissect their elements, their essence, and then see what of these different elements apply for which museum. It's not one size fits all approach.
Thank you. So the topic is underexplored, and I think that this is great that we have you here and we open this. In fact, it's not a subject that is discussed, so I'm very pleased that you are here, and I hope the audience as well. So it's important to leave space for questions, but I know that you have one final comment, each of you. So, Eleftheria, could you?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I thought this was more, let's say, more appropriate to start a discussion. Have you ever felt the limitations of purely analytical approaches to tackle societal problems? Imagine a way to move beyond endless discussions and spark a deeper sense of connection and collaboration. Imagine a way to tap into the intuitive wisdom of your right brain, fostering open awareness alongside focused exploration. And I would like to leave you with that.
Yeah, and Marlene?
And I have also one quotation that I connect to the example I brought to you before from the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. This is the words of a director of the museum whose job is to bring Isabella's legacy to the present, not to have a museum as a mausoleum of one person's life, but to really find always a way to connect the museum and her legacy, her vision. She was a very visionary woman to today's society. So the quotation is, the power of art resides not only in beauty, but in its ability to engage complexity, multiple perspectives, and new possibilities. Isabella's legacy manifests an ambition to wear the museum she created with civic purpose, to embrace communities too long disadvantaged by exclusion, to harness artistic risk-taking to social causes, to be engaged with the needs of the city and its residents in an ever-changing society. If we go back to the 19th century, when Isabella created her museum at the beginning of the 20th century, the societal problems were not very different to today. It was a changing community in Boston. Today is as multicultural as it was back then. So this gift she bequeathed to the city is always timely, and this applies to all museums. And it's a matter of how finding the right way to go through this transformation, their transformation.
So I want to thank you.
We thank you.
Both
Thank
of
you
you.
very much.
And,
I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
and to give some minutes to open a round of questions or discussions or comments or reflections even. Is there some? Okay.
First of all, thank you. This was an incredibly inspiring panel, and it's, I think, a challenge to accept to tackle that concept of spirituality, which has been, used so many times without really trying to go inside, literally, quite literally speaking. I just want to maybe give two etymological elements, because I know many of us here are very passionate about approaching phenomena or sites in that way, and I've especially enjoyed Phil's visit this morning because it allows for an immediacy to deconstruct the words rather than to add a layer of narrative. In 2018, I was called to create something in a very particular site in the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, close to Tulum. And when we were thinking about how it should be called, we decided not to call it museum, but we called it museion, to emphasize that initially these sites were temples of the muses. Nothing to do with objects, nothing to do with the building, all to do with reconnecting with our own creativity. And then the other element is from this morning's visit, and it's, where I really see the genius of Alexandra and the World Human Forum, that everything, the knowledge is made available with such immediacy that we can start, weaving the threads while we're here. We don't need to wait until we get somewhere else, or it's just happening all. It's all here for us. So Phil mentioned that to contemplate means to build our inner temple with the poetry and the inspirations we're lucky enough to experience. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Hello, thank you very much. I wanted to ask Marlene, Dr. Miliou, to comment on how museums could help patients with mental illness or with dementia, mild cognitive problems decline, because I know that you have some interest in that.
Oh, they do a lot of work. This is really an immense new field of research and practice in museums for quite some time. I have numerous examples to give, and have started working on this direction in Greece as well. In fact, these days are Alzheimer days, and last year or 2 years ago, there were special events organized within the framework of a project we developed in the University of Athens. mental health issues have been paramount for a very long time. They came as a striking new old phenomenon after the pandemic during COVID. There are museums that dedicate themselves into this specific subject, and I have a very good example in the Netherlands that was an awarded museum it's called the Museum of the Mind. They do immense work. Art is always the medium to use, but not only. It can be history objects, it can be any type of object. Historic house museums, because I have this feeling of house, warmly familiar, humane environment that can create this connection with objects, with stories, and with people. So there is a huge potential. Often we are asked as museologists, but can museums be therapy for everything? Museums can be the starting entry point to a different kind of therapy. We believe in that. In Greece, there is a new project of prescription, art on prescription, art as a therapy. It's about time to make all these different activities coming to the fore as not little islands in an archipelagos, but really as a force de tour for museums.
Great. So, Alexandra wants to.
Well, I would like to add something about this. We will see later an interview we did with two wonderful women in the United States, Ivy Ross and Susan McSalmon, who have written this amazing book, Your Brain on Art. They were with us last year and they're coming back again next year. And I'm saying this now to you because the idea is that next year we would like to focus our symposium in Elefsina on the therapeutic capacity of the arts, being able to heal us, of course, but also helping us to heal nature. We saw a few things earlier today, and possibly even helping us heal or curate the capitalist system.
That would be wonderful.
So we would love to have you on our side when we organize that.
With all my pleasure.
Thank you, Alexandra, for the spoiler for next year. And thank you again for being here.